Welcome to the State Water Control Board meeting this morning, April 7th, 2026. Good to be here. Nice to see everyone. So before we get started this morning, I'll ask for the board to have introductions. And I'll go first at this moment to say we're welcoming a new board member today, Mr. James Patterson, and I'll let him speak more about that, but welcome to our group today. And I will start down here on Mr. Brannon's side. If you would like to go first, please.
Tommy Brannon, Henrico County.
Good morning, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Yob. I am also representing Henrico County.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Michelle Johnson, representing Charles City County.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Cameron from Fairfax County.
Jerry Kilgore, Henrico County.
And James Patterson from the City of Fairfax.
Mike Roldan, Director DEQ.
Morning, Madam Chair. Emily Little, Office of the Attorney General.
Thank you. And I am Lou Wallace, currently your State Water Control Board Chair from far southwest Virginia, namely Russell County. So this morning, before we have an approval, I'll ask for an approval of the minutes. So before we do that, Mr. Yob, do you have a disclosure you need to read?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do. I have submitted to DEQ staff a signed transactional disclosure statement pursuant to Virginia State and Local Government Conflict of Interest Act before participating in or voting on any agenda items that I would have a conflict with, specifically items B, D, and E. I do have a personal interest affected by these transactions, being my employment is with the County of Henrico as Deputy County Manager for Community Operations. Henrico County, like other Virginia localities, is subject to Virginia Water Protection and Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System watershed permit regulations. And we also hold Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits. With that, Madam Chair, I am fully able to participate in each of these agenda items, B, D, and E, fairly, objectively, and in the public's interest.
Thank you, Mr. Yob. And at this time, before we have our approval of the minutes, I'm going to read the rules. I think everyone in the room probably has them memorized, but we're going to do it again. So the attendees may not erect any signage inside or outside the meeting room or the building. Attendees are not entitled to be disorderly or disrupt the meeting from proceeding in an orderly, efficient, and effective fashion. Disruptive behavior may result in a recess or removal from the meeting. Possession or use of any device that may disrupt the conduct of the business is prohibited, including but not limited to voice amplification equipment, bullhorns, blowhorns, sirens, and other noise-producing devices, as well as signs on sticks, poles, or stakes, or helium-filled balloons. All attendees are asked to be respectful of all speakers. Rules will be enforced fairly and impartially, not only to ensure the efficient and effective conducting of business, but also to ensure no interference with the business of the complex, its employees, and guests. Attendees wishing to record the proceedings are welcome to do so. However, you may not interfere with the business of the meeting, nor impede the view or participation of other meeting attendees and staff. No smoking is allowed unless in a designated space outside. This includes tobacco and e-cigarettes. No alcohol, fireworks, pyrotechnics, weapons, or any substances, items controlled by law are allowed. No firearms are allowed in the state's contracted spaces except for firearms carried by law enforcement officers or authorized security personnel. All violators may be subject to removal from the meeting facility. Anyone removed from this facility may not re-enter. Anyone who fails to comply with removal may be charged with trespass. Thank you for listening. All right, I'm going to ask the board, I'm assuming you've had your packet in enough time that you've reviewed the minutes from the last meeting in November, and I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I have a motion to approve minutes. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Kilgore. Any discussion on these? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions?
I abstain, I wasn't here.
Gotcha. All right, thank you very much. Moving forward to the final exempt regulations, which is the General Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, watershed permit regulation for total nitrogen and total phosphorus discharges and nutrient trading in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. In Virginia, non-VAC 25-82, 2026 amendment and reissuance of the existing regulation. Ms. Golly, that's in tab B. Thank you.
Good morning. Is the microphone working?
Oh, we can't hear you.
Maybe now.
Hello? Better?
Somebody, yes.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I am Laura Galli. I am with the Office of IPTIS Permits. We are considering the General Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, watershed permit regulation for total nitrogen and total phosphorus discharges. No? Is that that?
It's this one. Just try coming closer.
Okay. So like that. Better? Little better, okay.
You want to hold it?
No, I'm good.
Speak a little louder.
So today we're considering the General Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, watershed permit regulation for total nitrogen and total phosphorus discharges and nutrient trading in the Chesapeake Bay watershed in Virginia, which expires on December 31st, 2026. We are at the final stage. Oh, no, it's okay. I can hold it then. You don't have to do that. Yeah. How about now?
Much
Okay.
better.
That is fabulous. I'm not going to go over the title again. You got that. So we are at the final stage of our normal revisions process, and we will be asking that the board approve the proposed regulation as final. Do I use this to go next? Okay. This slide shows a bit of an overview of the regulation. The regulation governs the discharge of point source nutrients from wastewater treatment and industrial facilities that are located in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We currently have 142 facilities covered by this permit. The initial permit was issued in 2007 in response to the January 2005 Virginia Chesapeake Bay Nutrient Sediment Reduction Strategy, and then the permit has been reissued every 5 years since. This slide shows a summary of our regulatory process. So the notice of intended regulatory action ran from August 12 through September 11, 2024, after which we held 3 technical advisory committee meetings on those dates shown. And the notice of public comment and public hearing were authorized by the State Water Control Board during the August 20, 2025 meeting. The public comment period ran from October 6th through December 5th, 2025, and we received several public comments, including from EPA, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Rappahannock Tribe of Virginia, and from an environmental consultant. And a public hearing was held on November 10, 2025, where we had 7 attendees, and we received 3 public comments during the public hearing. First of all, this slide shows the EPA review and comment. So the draft documents were submitted to EPA on June 18, 2025. EPA has 90 days to review and provide comments. The comments were received on September 15, 2025, where they asked for clarification on the revised nutrient monitoring frequencies for 2 specific floor tiers in the permit. And I'm showing here like a summary of the DQ response, which was provided on the same day. So the updated frequencies for the flow tiers for the 2027 permit were at the request were the result of 3 factors. First of all, the request of the regulated community. Then the result of an evaluation of statistical data which supported the change in monitoring frequency. and then a comparison to monitoring frequencies from other nutrient general permits across the country. And extensive basis for the change in monitoring frequencies is all included in the permit fact sheet. Final resolution and acceptance by EPA was received on September 23rd, 2025. So the next few slides are going to show the public comments received and summary of the DEQ response to comments. First of all, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation had a comment on 9 VSC 25-820-70 Part 1B4. So this condition was added during the proposed stage of the regulation, which was to provide those owners that have facilities located in different tributaries the flexibility to consolidate their mass loads across different tributaries. So right now, the permit allows the consolidation of wastewater allocation for facilities located within the same tributaries. So the primary concern of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation was that the new condition would seek to incorporate into regulation a concept and a process that currently does not exist under state law, and it will require additional regulatory changes that are outside of the nutrient general permit. And they requested to remove this language. The DEQ response is that the DEQ acknowledges that the state law does not currently address nor prohibit the transfer of wastewater allocation across tributaries, but after further consideration, DEQ concurs that there may be additional regulatory barriers and changes in implementing the new regulatory language as proposed, and as such, the proposed language has been removed. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation also had a comment on 9 VSC 25-820-70 Part 2B1. Basically, they just asked to add the underlined sentence in order to clarify the differences between the annual acquisition of point source credits versus the acquisition of a wastewater allocation. So the condition has been changed slightly from the proposed stage to kind of, provide this clarification. And so the DEQ response is that the section has been amended as proposed to improve clarity. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation also provided additional support on several minor clarification and amendments throughout the regulation. DEQ thanked them for the comments, and no changes were made in response to these comments. An environmental consultant asked the definition of HC. HC is referenced in the permit, but it was not really defined. DEQ therefore provided a definition for both 24-hour composite, which is HC, and 8-hour composite, and then we added HC equal to our composite to Part 1E1 of the permit for clarity. Another environmental consultant asked clarification for what happens to a wastewater allocation when a permit is terminated, and what are the options to acquire a wastewater allocation. We responded that Part 1B4 was added to the regulation during the proposed stage to specifically explain what happens to a wastewater allocation when a permit is terminated or expires and there is no transfer of wastewater allocation. So we have two scenarios described in the condition. And Part B2 of the existing regulation already provides all the options for the acquisition of a wastewater allocation, so it's already there. The Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies provided support for the reissuance of the permit and for the collaboration behind the reissuance. So the DEQ thanked them for the comments, and no changes to the regulation in response to these comments were made. And last but not least, we had a comment from the Rappahannock Tribe of Virginia, where they described a greater need for tribal involvement in matters affecting, all the Chesapeake Bay and the Chesapeake Bay program. They feel that it is necessary for DEQ to develop a more productive, collaborative relationship with the tribes. And the tribe expects to have a greater degree of cooperation between them and the state of Virginia, DEQ, and the Chesapeake Bay program, especially for those general permits that affect the Chesapeake Bay. And the tribe urges DEQ to take steps to enhance its relationship with the tribal nations of Virginia. The DEQ response is as follows. DEQ welcomes the tribe's perspective and collaboration in protecting the resources of the Chesapeake Bay and the Commonwealth. And we obviously welcome all the public engagement, which plays an essential role in developing the regulation that are sound and legally robust and responsive to diverse perspective. In addition, DEQ is currently working on ways to enhance collaboration with federally recognized tribal nations across the watershed in accordance with the December 2nd, 2025 Chesapeake Executive Council charge, the Principal Staff Committee. And lastly, DEQ welcomes any additional comments or questions from the tribe regarding this specific general permit, which is required by the Code of Virginia pursuant to the section underlined. And with that, I'm going to pause for questions.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Golly? Mr. Yob?
Ms. Golly, can you explain again if a permittee plant is acquired or otherwise becomes part of a larger organization and there's some consolidation in that business, what happens to that waste load allocation on the older facility, or is this even a concern of DEQ?
Yes, so we have a couple of scenarios. So you're referring to if they do want to consolidate waste allocation, or what happens if they just terminate a permit.
Right.
Okay, so if they terminate a permit, if they are a significant facility with a waste allocation included in the water quality management planning regulation, then the permit is terminated and the waste allocation goes to the nutrient offset fund, which is like this bank of waste allocation. If a facility is not a significant facility, so the waste allocation was based on their permitted design capacity, then if they terminate and they don't consolidate, then it basically goes away with the permit. And when they do want to consolidate waste allocations, again, currently they need to be located in the same tributary. So we do transfer, we do a consolidation also accounting for the delivery factors that affect the two facilities. So it's kind of like a calculation, and then we reflect the new load into basically the receiving facility.
The second question regards chlorophyll A. Could you give us a little bit on the current status of that? There was a lot of discussion about that a few years back.
Yes, the history of chlorophyll A goes back to 2005, I believe, and so at that time, it was actually the Water Control Board that approved the new chlorophyll A water quality criteria, and then there had been some models done by both EPA and DEQ that showed that basically there were some facilities located in the lower James that needed to have a reduced wastewater allocation in order to meet the criteria. So at that time, those facilities and their reduced total nitrogen and total phosphorus wastewater allocations were listed in, they were part of the general permit. So we had a table that showed all the facilities that needed to meet this criteria and their new reduced wastewater allocations. But in 2020 is when the water quality management planning regulation was opened, so that all these reduced wastewater allocations were added to that regulation. And that's why since then we started basically taking out the facilities from our permit, because at this point there is really no reason to have the facilities listed under the general permit because they're listed already in the regulation. So they actually had a final compliance deadline to meet the new criteria. That was January 1st, 2023. So at this point, they should have met compliance anyway.
So is the logic then that so goes the nitrogen and phosphorus, so goes the chlorophyll?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert here in terms of the studies that were done back then to kind of show these, relationship between the nutrients discharged and the chlorophyll A in the waters, but We have some experts.
I don't need to get into the minutiae, but
Okay.
I thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's my question.
Welcome. Anyone else have any questions or concerns or comments? Do we have any comments, public comments?
The last slide.
We have a speaker.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, yes, we do have Mr. Chris Pomeroy with Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. You want to come on over and use the microphone so we can talk here. You have 3 minutes, I'll start you a timer.
Very good. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Director, Chris Pomeroy, representing VAMWA. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll only be a moment or so. Thank you for the staff's work on this reissuance. VAMWA supports the reissuance and recommends it strongly. It is one of 3 key regulations that the board oversees for what has been a wildly successful environmental story since 2005, as was mentioned. The point source loads of nitrogen and phosphorus to the Chesapeake Bay have been reduced dramatically over the past 2 decades through large-scale local governmental investments, some state cost share through the Water Quality Improvement Fund, and some investments by business and industry in the watershed as well. So that's going very well. There is a major piece of that underway still, the so-called Phase 3 portion of the TMDL. In fact, the cost, this is the kind of the peak 3rd phase of this. The discussion up the hill in the state budget's on the order of $539 million merely for the state's share, which is smaller than the local government share of that portion of the program. So it's a capital-intensive, very costly program. The stability that you provide in these regulations and not changing them lightly is really critical to that capital investment program that's delivered so much for the Commonwealth. Very briefly as to the cross-basin tributary issue here, VAMWA appreciates the answer that for the reasons that DEQ provided, the answer they landed on that. A little bit of the background there is that request came from one of our members who has multiple facilities over multiple basins and is actually seeking to remove an old wastewater plant from a sensitive small creek, but to do so needs to transfer the flow to an existing higher performing facility in another basin. So I'm sure one way or another we'll find a way to get there ultimately. There are a few different regulations in play here that just make that a little tricky today. VAMWA is accepting of the department's recommendation, and we support the recommendation and urge you to approve. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pomeroy.
Okay. Next slide. Staff recommendations. Staff recommends that the board adopt the amendments to the General Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, watershed permit regulation for total nitrogen and total phosphorus discharges, and nutrient rating in the Chesapeake Bay watershed in Virginia, 9 VC 25820. And staff also recommends that the board affirm that it will receive, consider, and respond to petitions by any person at any time with respect to reconsideration or revision of this regulation as provided by the Administrative Process Act.
Thank you. Board, you've heard staff recommendation. What is your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the staff recommendations.
I have a motion to approve. I need a second.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion before we vote? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving along to tab C, we have final regulations from Virginia Pollution Abatement, Permit Regulation 9, VAC 25-32, the implementation of Chapter 209 of the 2024 Acts of the Assembly, House Bill 870, presented by Mr. Neil Zaradka. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my voice is a little different frequency than Laura's, so hopefully I will not boom you out here. Find the right distance. This day, I'll be bringing to you for final adoption of amendments to 9 BAC 25-32, and this is implementation of Chapter 209 of the 2024 Acts of Assembly regarding biosolids management during extreme weather events. I'm Neil Zarodka. I manage DEQ's Office of Land Application Programs. So let's see. So the Virginia General Assembly passed House Bill 870 during the 2024 General Assembly, directing DEQ to amend the applicable biosolids regulations to provide flexibility in land application permits when land application is limited due to increased intensity, frequency, and duration of storm events. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of background that most of you have seen before, refreshing your memory, Mr. Patterson, for your benefit. So historically, extended periods of wet weather have made it difficult for contractors to access farmland and land applied biosolids at a normal schedule and at a normal pace. And existing storage and staging options may not be adequate to manage extreme conditions. And we had a period during late 2018 and 2019 that set a number of records in Virginia, which we had one of these scenarios emerge. So our current Virginia pollutant abatement regulations regarding biosolids storage, so where biosolids is stored for longer periods of time, greater than 45 days, and on sites other than where that storage facility is located, we have requirements for routine storage. And these facilities for dewatered biosolids must be covered, they must be constructed on an engineered surface, and they're also subject to the sewage collection and treatment regulations specific to the processes and require engineering approval, so forth and so on. And they also, and it's very significant, they must obtain local government approval to site one of these facilities, which in some cases can make that difficult to do. We also have in the current regulations provisions for on-site storage, which is storage less than 45 days for application only on fields owned or operated by that owner of that, where that facility is located. And these storage pads are designed for farms that use a greater amount of biosolids and may already have sites on the farm that can be retrofitted to meet these on-site storage provisions. So a roof is not required for these, but best management practices must be employed to prevent contact with stormwater. That surface must be constructed to meet permeability and strength requirements. And most of our Virginia pollution abatement individual permits do already contain provisions for on-site storage authorizing that. These locations must be approved by DEQ, but they don't require approval by the local government. So we began this regulatory process in 2024 when we had a comment period for the notice of our intended regulatory action in response to the General Assembly action. We held two regulatory advisory panel meetings in 2025, which consisted of a number of stakeholders. And I've made this comment, I think, at each presentation, that this was, of the regulatory advisory panels that I've worked with, some of the best collaboration between sometimes opposing interests. They worked really well, and you'll see that reflected in our response to comments. In August of last year, this board authorized us to take the proposed amendments to public comment, and in December and January of this year, we held a public comment period. So the amendments that were put out for comment proposed that we add Section 410 regarding, in Section 410, options for an emergency management plan. So it already requires a biosolids management plan. This is an optional provision for the permittees, and where they would submit this plan to DEQ outlining available storage options and capacity that they already have. specify what conditions would trigger the need for implementation of emergency conditions. And these plans would allow some deviation from certain permit conditions when the plan is implemented. That plan would require DEQ approval at the head of the process before the emergency conditions would occur. So these deviations from the normal permit requirements would include things like on-site storage flexibility in the sites that could be used for on-site storage, the amount of material that could be stored there, as well as that time period. It wouldn't, they could potentially store material for longer than 45 days. It would require that the notification signposting 5 days before land application, there could be some flexibility there. They could have options in their operations and maintenance manuals for differing procedures during emergencies, as well as the option to authorize other emergency storage locations that weren't otherwise authorized for bisolid storage. So emergency storage, these locations would have to be pre-approved by DEQ, and the conditions that are in the proposed amendments are most similar to those required for our on-site storage provisions. It would require notification to the locality that these sites were being made available. Would require presence by a certified land applier when storage was occurring. Require additional inspections and reporting of these emergency locations, and would have to be prioritized for moving material off of those emergency storage sites before their otherwise routine and on-site storage locations. So before they could implement that plan, if emergency conditions emerged, they would have to notify DEQ, document that those emergency conditions exist, and then outline their strategy to utilize all the currently permitted storage that was in their permit. It would require an addendum to their monthly reporting outlining the steps they were taking to manage the emergency. The implementation of that plan and the allowed deviations the provision of that would end when the conditions limiting normal land application would cease. So when we put these out for public comment, we had several organizations comment on the provisions. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation supported these and indicated that it established reasonable standards for what the legislation required. The Virginia Association of Municipal Water Authorities supported the amendments as well, indicating that they serve to implement the 2024 law. And then they did have some concerns regarding the background information in the town hall and DPB review documents that we addressed in the town hall documents as far as clarity there. And they did also request some changes to allow generators to submit emergency action plans. We did not add additional provisions for generators. That would be the wastewater plants themselves. The emergency action plans are focused on the VPA regulations, which is what the legislation pointed to. We also have existing flexibility within the sludge management plans that are part of a VPDES permit for the generator to manage things at the plant itself during an emergency. And we discussed some of those provisions in the regulatory advisory panel as well. The Virginia Biosolids Council also supported the amendments, indicating that it aligned with the legislative intent as well, and did request some changes regarding plan adaptability and notice for plan amendments during the plan. And I'll summarize those in just a moment. We did have one land application contractor comment independently, indicating that they also supported the amendments. but did have an objection to some of the limitations on the scope of those deviations that would be allowed from normal permit requirements. We did not make any additional changes to the proposed amendments in response to that comment. The legislation was very specific regarding the scope of what we were to amend. And we also still have within the VPA regulation a variance procedure that could be used if down the road there were some other deviation that might be helpful during emergency that we could have used to address that. And then there were two other comments that were either not relevant or beyond the scope of this regulatory action. So between our proposed regulations that went to public notice and the final amendments that are in your board books, we did make some minor changes. One, there were some non-substantive changes to Section 410, primarily to improve clarity, consistency, precision of terminology. We recognized that the timeline and the flow of how that plan would be approved and implemented and ending needed to be clarified, so we did that. We also reordered the sections and incorporated one section into another. In the section regarding emergency management plan revisions, we did make some substantive changes there in response to comments. Originally, we had indicated that the permittees would notify DEQ within 30 days of making any changes. We changed that to 90 days to offer some more flexibility. That's in alignment with the requirements for notifying us of changes in their operation and maintenance manuals, so it offered some more consistency. We also clarified when a plan that was already approved would require reapproval if they changed it. We itemized the things that would require approval by DEQ, but things like changes in contracts, changes in normal operations, if they were keeping that plan up to date, that wouldn't require approval by DEQ. In Section 550 on storage facilities, we also made some of those same non-substantive changes just to make sure that it was clear regarding we were approving emergency storage sites and the conditions that were applicable. So does the board have any questions?
Any questions for this comment? Any comments? Do we have any public comments? Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. So DEQ staff recommends that the board adopt the final amendments to the Virginia Pollution Abatement Permit Regulation 9 VAC 25-32 and authorize its publication.
Thank you. The board has heard staff recommendation. What's the pleasure?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the staff recommendation.
I have a motion on the floor to adopt staff recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the fast track, which you will find in tab D. This is the Virginia Water Protection Permit Regulation 9 VAC 25-210 Fast Track Amendment in response to changes to the local and regional water supply planning regulation 9 VAC 25-780.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Eric Seavey. I'm the Office of Water Withdrawal Permitting and Compliance Manager at DEQ, and I'm here to talk today briefly about the changes to the Virginia Water Protection Permit Program Regulation. And we propose to fast track this amendment, and it's in response to changes to the local and regional water supply planning regulation. So some of those changes in response to the update to the local and regional water supply plan regulation include updates to cross-reference to chapters set to Chapter 780, which is the water supply planning regulation, clarified public notice provisions, and to remove local or regional when referencing water supply plans. The reason for that is local water supply plans are no longer addressed in the water supply planning regulations. Specifically, Section 210.320 of the VWP regulation has been updated. This part of the regulation is for pre-application procedures for water withdrawals that are greater than 90 million gallons a month. And we removed and replaced a citation in that subdivision. We removed one instance of local or regional when referencing the water supply plans, and then clarifying some of the public notice provisions. Section 340, which it covers the application requirements for a VWP surface water withdrawal permit, specifically justification and need. There was a reference there where some of those conditions can be satisfied by the water supply planning regulation, and we removed a citation that had been repealed. Section 360 of 210, which is the VWP regulation, covers project alternatives, and that those conditions can be satisfied by some of the requirements in a water supply plan, and we removed 3 instances of the reference to local or regional in that. Those are really the changes. That's about it. So, any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Seavey? You may continue.
All right, thank you. So, staff recommends the board authorize the department to promulgate the amendments to Part 5, 9 VAC 25-210-300 et sec. of the VWP permit program regulation for public comment using the fast track process established in section 2.2-4012.1 of the administrative process. The regulation is expected to be non-controversial. The board's authorization constitutes its adoption of the regulation at the end of the public comment period, provided that no objection to use of the fast track process is received from 10 or more persons or any members of the application or of the applicable standing committee of either House of the General Assembly or the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules, and the department does not find it necessary based on public comments or for any other reason to make any changes to the amendments. Staff also recommends that the board authorize the department to set an effective date no earlier than 15 days after the close of the 30-day public comment period, provided the proposal completes the fast track rulemaking process as provided in section 2.2-4012.1 of the Administrative Process Act, and the department does not find it necessary to make any changes to the amendments.
Board, you've heard the staff recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the staff recommendations.
We have a motion to approve staff recommendation. I need a second. I've got a second. I'm going to take Mr. Kilgore's over here. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Seavey.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to hear from Ms. Robb on the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Regulation 9 VAC 25-875 to amend the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Regulation to improve the efficiency of permit fee collections.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. My name is Jamie Robb, and I'm the Water Operations Division Director for DEQ. And I'm here today to present to you a fast-tracked amendment to the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Regulation 9 VAC 25-875. These amendments specifically address the timing of the collection of application fees for the construction general permit. The amendments will establish that 100% of the application fee be due at the time of application. The amendments also seek to clarify application modification and maintenance fee requirements for the construction general permit and the municipal separate storm sewer permits, or MS4s, as well as establish consistency between the fee sections of the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Regulation, as well as the fee regulations for other water permit programs. These amendments are in addition to the amendments previously approved by the board in November that were approved to adjust the construction, stormwater, and MS4 fee schedules. Those amendments will become effective on July 1st, and if approved by the board today, the amendments presented today would become effective no earlier than July 2nd, or 15 days after the close of the comment period, whichever is later. The fee section of the Virginia Stormwater Management Regulations currently establishes that DEQ, or a Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Program Authority, cannot collect more than 50% of the total application fee at the time of plan submittal, and then the remaining balance is due prior to the department's issuance of the construction general permit. From a process standpoint, applicants must submit stormwater plans and obtain approval prior to DEQ processing the application for coverage under the CGP. The proposed amendment would require that the full fee be paid at the time of application submittal. The proposed amendment also moves the application fee due date requirements from the fee schedule portion of the regulation to the due date section of the regulation. It creates distinct subsections for application, modification, and maintenance fees for both construction and MS4 permits. So there's a couple of different things going on with this regulatory amendment. The main purpose of that is to clarify 100% of the application fees be paid at the application submittal time. But because of the way the stormwater fee subsections were oriented, it was a little confusing. There were pieces and parts kind of scattered throughout. So what we're trying to do is establish that 100% at the time of application, but also create some clarity and consistency. So throughout the current regulation, there's an inconsistent use of the terminology application, stormwater management plan, and erosion and stormwater management plan, or ESM, when referring to an applicant's submittal for construction stormwater permit coverage. So the changes before you seeks to clarify that the word application may include the submittal of a stormwater management or erosion and stormwater management plan. So additionally, as I mentioned, we're hoping to kind of reorganize how the fee subsection is structured. So what you see up here, I know it's a little bit small, but what you see up here now is a screenshot of our current regulation. And as it is right now, the application fee requirements, modification and maintenance fee requirements, all of that language is kind of intermingled and is not structured well. And so as part of the regulatory amendment, again, just for consistency and clarity, we're proposing that we restructure that slightly to just create some distinct sections that pertain to that application, maintenance, and modification for both construction general permit coverage as well as for MS4 permits. So I know that was a lot of different pieces to that amendment before you, but I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Any questions for Ms. Robb?
Just one?
Yes, sir.
So it sounds like you're cutting the administrative burden in half, right? Going from potentially 2 payments to 1 payment.
That's correct, sir. As I mentioned, DEQ, we receive plans, and the regulation authorizes us to collect up to 50%. But what typically happens is we just receive the plan for review and approval, and then we don't collect our portion of the fee until we actually issue the coverage. But as demonstrated in the language, application includes plan throughout the regulation.
Any more questions? You may proceed.
DEQ staff recommends that the board authorize DEQ to promulgate amendments to the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management Regulation for public comment using the fast track process established in Section 2.2-4012.1 of the Administrative Process Act for regulations expected to be non-controversial. The board's authorization constitutes its adoption of the regulation at the end of the public comment period, provided that 1, no objection to use of the fast track process is received from 10 or more persons, or any member of the applicable standing committee of either House of the General Assembly or the Joint Commission on Administrative Rules, and 2, DEQ does not find it necessary based on public comments or for any other reason to make any changes to the amendments. Staff also recommends that the board authorize DEQ to set an effective date no earlier than 15 days after the close of the 30-day comment period, or July 2nd, 2026, whichever is later, provided 1, the proposal completes the fast track rulemaking process as provided in Section 2.2-4012.1 of the Administrative Procedures Act, and 2, DEQ does not find it necessary to make any changes to the amendments.
Thank you. Board, you've heard staff recommendation. What's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I move we adopt the staff recommendation.
I have a motion to adopt staff recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second from Ms. Johnson. Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Robb. And I think you've got another section going on here.
Let me grab those slides.
We'll be moving along to other business, which is a report by Ms. Robb to the board regarding controversial permits.
Hello again, members of the board, Madam Chair. Here today to talk a little bit about the controversial permits currently in front of the agency as it pertains to our water programs. So this report's being provided based on Section 10.1-1184.1B, which provides that at each regular meeting of the board, the department shall provide an overview and update regarding any controversial permits pending before the department. Controversial permit includes a water permitting action for which a public hearing has been granted. And right now, in front of the agency, there are 6 controversial permits in this update. So the first couple, some of you will have seen before. They're related to our Virginia Pollutant Abatement, or VPA, permit program. The first one is for Synagro and for their land application permit for Essex County. And just as a reminder, for our land application permits, we issue a separate permit base for each county that a company is land applying in. So a permit would cover multiple sites. This particular permit action is for a modification. We've got a little bit more information here for you. The application, the permit currently authorizes about 19,000 acres of land application sites, and the modification would add an additional 6,300 acres, giving a total of about almost 26,000 acres authorized for land application. So the department received this application back in October of 2023, deemed it complete in October of 2024. As part of the regulatory process, we held a public meeting to discuss the application, produced a draft permit to the applicant in December 2024, and then held a comment period from January 8th to February 7th, during which time we had received requests for a hearing. DEQ granted that hearing and went back out for a public hearing comment period from April to June of 2025, with a hearing scheduled and held on May 19th. And ultimately a second hearing, the summary and response to comments hearing, held in August of 2025. So we had 27 comments received. 26 of those had requested that hearing, which resulted in the project becoming controversial. And the nature of those comments revolved around PFAS specifically. And issues were raised because Maryland biosolids containing PFAS were being land applied in Virginia. That was comments we had received, as well as concerns about elevated PFAS in water downstream from land application sites, and as well as contamination of soils, agricultural products, and water, and then just general harm to human health and wildlife. So right now, you all may be aware that the General Assembly, both houses, passed legislation regarding PFAS and land application of biosolids, and specifically established some monitoring and monitoring requirements as well as some thresholds. And DEQ is currently awaiting final action by the governor's office to move forward with any further biosolids action, permit action on this, given the citizen concern that was raised. The second permit also is a Synagro permit, BPA permit, and that is a reissuance for Synagro's Orange County permit. Again, the permit authorizes land application on sites throughout the county. The permit term is for about 10 years, or excuse me, is for 10 years, and so we have to reissue those as they come up for reissuance. Currently, the permit covers 3,500 acres, and the applicant is proposing to add 200 acres, remove almost 1,200 acres, so the total acreage that is being proposed in the draft reissuance permit is about 2,500 acres. So again, I'll quickly go over some timelines. We got an application in-house for the reissuance, October of 2024, deemed that complete in March of 25, provided the applicant a draft permit, and then proceeded to a public comment period in July of 2025. DEQ received several comments and ultimately granted a public hearing that was held on October 23rd. And that was accompanied by a second comment period that spanned from September to November of 2025. The comments, again, was centered around PFAS, effects on surface water and groundwater. Some other comments pertaining to contaminants related to pharmaceuticals and microplastics were raised in the comments, as well as contamination of local food sources and concerns for odor. So at this juncture, the next step would be for the agency to hold a summary and response to comments hearing before issuing any final decision on the permit. But again, we're waiting to see what happens with that legislation. The next controversial permit is within our Virginia Water Protection Shop. So this is a project for the Lexington Golf and Country Club. And this is a new permit issuance out in Lexington, Virginia. Specifically, the permit request is for surface water withdrawal from Woods Creek for purposes of golf course irrigation. And the golf course is a redevelopment project with a 2-year turf establishment and requesting water withdrawal of 45 million gallons per year to facilitate that new turf. Just a quick indication, I'm sure most folks know where Lexington is. And we received the application in March of 2025 for this one, deemed the application complete in June, drafted a permit, provided it to the applicant, and then ultimately went out for a public comment period in January of 2026. During that comment period, DEQ received several comments and granted a hearing request in response to those comments. We received 110 comments, 102 of them requested a hearing, and the nature of the concerns regarded the golf course redevelopment Issues with erosion and sediment control. So they had essentially, as they were establishing the new turf out there, had kind of killed off the grass, and so it was causing some erosion problems at the site, and citizens raised those issues. Water withdrawal, there were concerns about the water withdrawal from the lake there on site, as well as concerns regarding disturbance to streams and wetlands associated with the project. Specifically, there were concerns raised with contamination of one of the on-site wells and potential elevated levels of PFAS and lead. Citizens raised concerns about riparian buffers. I mentioned the sedimentation associated with the erosion concerns, and then just in general chemical contamination of runoff from the golf course. So right now we have a public hearing scheduled for April the 23rd. Following that hearing, we expect to hold a second hearing, the summary and response to comments hearing in May, and expect a potential final decision on the permit action in July. So now moving into the VIPDs, Virginia Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Program. We've got 3 controversial permits that are being managed by the agency. The first one is for the Arlington County Water Pollution Control Plant in Arlington County, Virginia. This is a reissuance, and under the VIPDs permit program, we reissue those permits every 5 years. So this facility has a rated capacity of 40 million gallons per day. It is a municipal wastewater treatment plant that discharges to the Potomac River Basin through Four Mile Run. And it is also a generator of biosolids that are land applied by a separate entity. So the agency received the initial reissuance application in June 2024 and deemed that complete in July. We drafted a permit, provided that to the applicant, and then ultimately went out to comment in September of 2025, and that comment period was for 30 days. We received several comments related to the draft permit and granted a hearing for this one. We held a second comment period associated with the hearing on from December 8th through January 30th, with the hearing held on January 5th of 2026. So 121 comments in total were received on this permit. 111 of them requested a public hearing, and the nature of the controversy, was all related to PFAS, specifically PFAS in the effluent discharge from the treatment plant, as well as PFAS associated with the biosolids generated at the facility. So next steps in this one, again, we are waiting to see what happens with the biosolids legislation, but we would expect a summary and response to comments hearing be held sometime around June, with a potential permit action probably in July or later. Our second VIPDs permit on the list is the Mountain View Nursing Home. This is a small municipal discharge in Madison County, Virginia. The applicant is Oak Grove Mennonite Church, and this again is a reissuance permit action. The discharge from the plant is approximately 15,000 gallons per day. It's considered a minor municipal under the VIPDs program, and it discharges to an unnamed tributary to Great Run in the Rappahannock River Basin. So DEQ received an application for this reissuance in April of 2025, deemed that application complete in May, followed up with a draft permit, and then went to the first comment period in October. That lasted from October 30th through December 1st. Received several comments from citizens on this project. Granted the public hearing December 19th, and then unfortunately the weather did not cooperate with us, because we had scheduled a hearing for March 2nd, and then had even a backup date scheduled for March 16th. Both times the agency had to cancel those hearings due to inclement weather. So the comment period for this one associated with the hearings a little bit longer, from January 22nd, 2026 through June 11, 2026. But that is to accommodate the hearing that we're expecting in May of 2026. So the comments, we received 30 comments. All 30 of them had requested a hearing on this project. Nature of controversy surrounding this was concerns with non-compliance. Commenters had stated that the facility had a history of non-compliance with effluent limits, as well as they asserted that untreated sewage had been discharged to a stream. They raised concerns about the health of the stream because of the discharge, including surrounding environment of private wells, crops, and livestock. So as mentioned, we're planning for a hearing in May. We would expect the second hearing, the summary and response to hearings, in August, and expect a final action on this one in September. And then lastly, the sixth permit on the controversial permit list is a VIPD's permit for the Lake Anna Tech Campus. This is a data center that is proposing to discharge non-contact cooling water at about 0.28 MGD. Specifically, they're proposing to discharge to Sedges Creek, which leads to Lake Anna in the York River Basin. And it is an Amazon-owned project. So you can see there, that aerial is an aerial of the construction of the facility that's been ongoing. The application for Lake Anna Tech Campus was received in July of 2025. We deemed that complete in August. Ultimately, our first comment period ran from November through December for 30 days. And we received several comments from citizens in the area regarding the project, and specifically the discharge of non-contact cooling water to this to Sedges Creek. The draft public hearing comment period for this one was from January 29th through April 3rd, so just ended last week. And we did hold a draft permit public hearing on March 19th. So during the initial comment period, 66 comments were received. 28 of them had requested a hearing. Nature of controversy were local citizens concerned with a new discharge to Lake Anna. And again, this goes to Sedges Creek to Lake Anna, specifically the hot side of Lake Anna. Comments included concerns about the integrity of the waters of Lake Anna from the discharge, as well as possible non-compliance with discharge limits from the data center, and concerns with thermal loading associated with the discharge and ultimately discharging to Lake Anna. So as I mentioned, on March 19th, we held a public hearing. There were 95 attendees, in which 20 provided comments on the draft permit. Again, nature of those comments at that hearing were very similar: concerns about temperature, concerns about the integrity of the water from the discharge. And then lastly, we expect the next hearing, the summary and response to comments hearing, to occur in June, with a final permit decision in July. And that is a lot for controversial permits, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. You've made up for lost time. Any questions for Ms. Robb? I do.
Go ahead.
Let me go. Okay. So my question is, and it's just totally just curiosity on my sake, is the temperature from the non-contact, I guess, water into Sedges Creek, what's the temperature on that? Do you all, I'm sure you know, don't you?
We do have water quality standards associated with temperature. I'm not sure if I know what they're proposing as their temperature, but what we would do is we establish in the permit the thresholds. There's, for example, a requirement that the discharge can't raise the receiving stream temperature by 3 degrees.
Okay.
Right, so we look at those things, and there's some other temperature components to the water quality standard regulation. So we look at those things as we're drafting the permit to ensure that we're being protective of downstream waters.
And one more thing, the hot side, as you called it, of Lake Anna, I get you, but that has a certain cap on the temperature on that at all times, doesn't it?
I'm looking at my friend Bryant here, who is very
Sorry.
familiar with the Lake Anna permit, so I'm going to rely on him to answer that.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Brian Thomas. I'm director of our Water Resources Division. What's commonly referred to as the hot side of Lake Anna is actually the waste heat treatment facility, which is separate from Lake Anna, which is the cold side, which is the reservoir, the cooling water supply for the nuclear power plant. So the waste heat treatment facility is not a surface water that's regulated like other water bodies in Virginia where we have discharges. It is a treatment lagoon, if you will. So the thermal criteria of our water quality standards don't apply in that treatment lagoon because it is designed and in place to allow heat dissipation from the cooling water from the nuclear power plant. So when we're talking about the temperature and the impacts downstream, it's really on the receiving stream that is going to then flow into the hot side or the waste heat treatment facility. I don't know if that answers your question, but it gives you the context of the lay of the land around Lake Anna.
Very good. Thank you for the comment.
Thanks, Brian.
And I stepped on you, Mr. Cameron.
That's
wanna
your
go?
prerogative, Madam Chairman. I actually had a related question, though. What is the source of the cooling water for this data center? And are there any concerns about impacts on either surface water if it's coming from surface water or groundwater if it's coming from an aquifer?
Is that coming from the reservoir?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, Melanie Davenport, Cross Media Division Director. I was the hearing officer for this public hearing, which is why I have answers. I am not involved in the permitting. Currently, the source water will be taken from groundwater wells in the vicinity. It is not within a groundwater management area. The plan, though, is that there will be a pipeline built from Louisa County. They have a Northeast Creek Reservoir. So the groundwater withdrawal is sort of a temporary startup source, and eventually they will be receiving water from Louisa County.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, Ms. Rowe.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving along, Ms. Davenport, it looks like you're up again for Mountain Valley Pipeline update.
Madam Chairman, you turned it off? Got it. Madam Chairman, members of the board, nice to see you again. And yes, this is the regular update on Mountain Valley Pipeline mainline. Not much has changed since our last update, other than the project remains in post-restoration with a focus on achieving permanent vegetation and maintaining erosion and sediment controls. These pictures were taken in March. I'm assuming that it's all greened up by now since everything has greened up. But these are just some snapshots of the post-construction restoration and of the vegetation. What they are looking at is maintaining the conditions such that we can get that post-construction stabilization, which means if they need to, they're going back in and reworking soil, reseeding, and making sure the vegetation is established. They're continuing to install permanent access roads. I think we've talked a little bit about that in the past. What has happened with that program is that landowners have approached the project And originally, if there had been temporary construction of access roads, landowners have asked that they be converted to permanent access roads. Changes have been made to plans, and then that construction activity is ongoing. Again, we had thought maybe that we would be in post-construction final stabilization by summer. It looks like there will still be some work going throughout the rest of 2026, and are now anticipating we will be in final stabilization by the end of the year. What this all really involves is going back and removing erosion and control, sediment control devices, and then stabilizing the land underneath them. We remain out on the site, conducting regular inspections along with our third-party inspectors, which is MVP. From December until mid-March, we had no complaint investigations. We did note some issues for corrective action. We did note some issues of non-compliance, and the stipulated penalty collection from the last period was $1,000. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Davenport?
Yeah, I have one actually. So if we're taking some temporary roads and turning them to permanent roads, who's responsible for the maintenance of those permanent roads going forward?
It reverts to the landowners, because they were easements granted by the landowners.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Ms. Davenport.
Thank you.
Should I turn it off? Is there anybody else? You?
Next on the agenda, we have the future meeting dates, which is set for June 30th, 2026. Ms. Porterfield?
That is correct. Still working on a location, but please hold that date.
Okay, very good. And public forum, do you have any speakers?
No, ma'am, we do not have any public speakers this morning that are registered to speak.
All right, we have no public speakers, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Kilgore. I need a second.
Second.
Got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are officially adjourned. Thank you.